Speak about Jainism, I really want to speak about Islam because, as a mathematician myself, Islam has had a massive place when it came in the Islamic world has a massive place in mathematical evolution, right? Like the Islamic
The
world,
algebra and things.
of course, and I don't think it gets its credit. Like Baghdad was a wonderful place of intellectuals back in the day, and we don't speak about that enough. And we, again, as you said, it gets maligned to this modern. Well, I wouldn't even say modern Islam because it's 1.3 billion Muslims across the world. How can it be this idea of one Islam? Is impossible. So, um, like that, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are in the center of scientific and mathematical evolution and discovery, then surely that means that you are seeking, you're asking questions, you're wanting to expand your idea of the world and the idea of reality and the universe. And surely that must mean that your Islamic tradition must enhance that ability to think bigger than what's in a book, if that makes
Absolutely. Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So
Right.
how come that, or I might be wrong again, how come that tradition hasn't continued, or has it continued and it hasn't been highlighted?
Yeah. No, I think this is really interesting question. So I think that what happens is that you have from the time of the Prophet in the 7th century, really until the 19th century or so, Muslims have had major empires, right, across the world. And that's kind of how, South Asians, many of them, what's in now Pakistan and Bangladesh, became Muslim, right? So it wasn't necessarily by conquest, but it was also by the spiritual tradition, the Sufi tradition that really appealed and brought in new ideas, new perspectives, new spiritual powers to the communities that were living in different parts of Asia. But what happens in the 19th century is colonization happens, right? And the Europeans come and they conquer all of the old empires of the Muslims. And so there's a big existential crisis in the Muslim world. The question is, well, if we have the true religion, if we have a special relationship with God, then how is it that non-Muslims have now conquered us? How is it that the caliphate has ended? How is it that this destruction has happened? And so there were two kind of camps, right, that were trying to figure out how to respond to this. So everyone realized that whatever was happening or the way that they were practicing religion was just not tenable. The modernity and colonization forced us to question our religion and figure out, okay, how do we deal with the modern world going forward? So some people saw Islam as a problem. So these are people like the Shah of Iran, Ataturk in Turkey. They said, okay, well, we need to just become secular, lose Islam as a religion, maybe keep it as a culture, but we need to become Western and modern the Europeans and the Americans. At that time, especially it was Europeans, and really just become Europeanized in our culture and our thinking. That now is a minority perspective. The majority, I think, Muslims now believe that you have to change the faith. So something was wrong with regards to how the faith was being practiced. So some believe that you have to adapt it to modernity, which I think is the majority. And then a small minority believe that you have to go back to the fundamentals of the faith. So they're called the fundamentalists. And so they believe that maybe the way that Islam was being practiced was wrong. And so we need to become more puritanical, more strict in our religion so that God would favor us again, right? And so from that group, then you have some extremists that came out of that. And that was also as a reaction to European power. A lot of the terrorists and sort of the terrorism that evolves, a lot of it happens because of European interventionism, right? Just because of people invading the Muslim countries and Iraq, Afghanistan, think of all of these places, right? So these are reactions to those sorts of things, right? But I think the majority of Muslims in the world today, they are, they're interested in contributing in a positive way to the world. And they believe that their religion has values and beliefs that can make the world a better place, right? So Muslims, for instance, they have to pray 5 times a day, right? So you have to get out of the secular mode of thinking, and 5 times a day, you have to turn to God. So you have to understand that there's something greater than just making money and material success, right? So that's something that's integrated. Muslims have to give 2.5% of all of their wealth every year to the poor, right? So every individual Muslim has to do this as a religious obligation, right, to God. So you have to take care of the poor. You have to be mindful of those that don't have, right? And you have to figure out some sort of way to redistribute wealth to the poor as well, right? You have to fast during the month of Ramadan, right? So during the month, then Muslims will, from morning till evening, they won't eat, they won't drink, they won't have sex, they can't, smoke, they can't do anything. And you have to focus on God. So for a whole month, your body physically slows down and you're forced to go into another mode of being outside of the secular world and into a sacred sort of space, right? And reflect upon your life and figure out what you've done good and what you've done bad and try to improve yourself for the next year, right? It's a time of like parishan, right? Like sort of a type of reflection and atonement and stuff like that, right? So I think that these are ways that the tradition allows you to have great spiritual and intellectual tools to deal with the modernity, but also to not be completely caught up in materialism and sort of capitalism as an end in and of itself. That there's something greater to life than just material success, you know?
No, I think thank you so much for explaining that to me so thoroughly, especially quite concisely as well. I probably could speak for hours on that.